Arsenal come streaming forward now in surely what will be their last attack. A good ball by Dixon, finding Smith. But Thomas charging through the midfield. Thomas, it's up for grabs now. Thomas, right at
the end. Hello and welcome to Gooners in the USA, where today, Mike, we celebrate a 3-0 win over Ostersunds.
Is that what happened? What day was that? I don't even know what day it is right now. I've been up for like 97 straight hours.
Well, that's not my fault that you're just addicted to Coke and whiskey.
Well, it is. I thought it was, what is it, Charlie, vodka and Charlie?
Yeah.
I prefer. But
and that's how you party.
That is how I party. So, we have to start off by saying that last Sunday's pod was a real treat. I mean, Andy and I have been kind of talking with each other about how excited it was to talk to two great guests, a bona fide Arsenal star in Kevin Campbell, and then Mr. Sweden himself, Matthias Karen. Brilliant conversations, and Kevin just was so brutally honest about his feelings about the club, his recollections from the past. It was a real kind of highlight of our podcasting career, Andy, right up there with when you had to wake me up from a slumber during the podcast about a year or so ago. I mean, those are the two highlights, aren't they?
Yeah, I think if we were to rank, I think so. If we were to rank top through bottom, it was probably there. And then I would say, when you look at other guests, Tom was probably the worst.
Yeah,
I mean, video games during the pod.
We swore we'd never have him back on again, so I'm glad that we've kept to that so far. So, anything else you want to keep to add up about talking to Kevin?
No,
Andy? That was a treat.
Yeah, he was great. He's promised to come back on again. We're looking forward to it.
And do me a favor, in a few hours, Leicester City plays in the fourth round of the FA Cup, and if they win, then my trip to Leicester to see Arsenal play there in March is not going to happen for me. So root for Sheffield United, please, for my sake. I'm sure now it'll be 6-0 to Leicester. And so let's bring in our guest for today, the aforementioned Tom Canton. If there's three things you need to know about this guy, here they are. Number one, he's tall and supposedly handsome. Number two, he had a vivid dream last night about his dog and an otter. And number three, he's the host of the Gooner Talk TV, kind of a more controversial Arsenal version of Logan Paul. So welcome back to
Jesus Christ.
And I only know who Logan Paul is because I have kids who are in their teens. But welcome back to the pod, Sir Thomas Archibald Asensio Canton III, OBE, or as I prefer to call you, T-Bone. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, boys. I appreciate the awful introduction.
Tell us about your dream
it's a
last
tradition.
night, Tom.
What's that? Sorry, I was playing.
I said, tell
us when you got off the bus. What did you dream?
Tell us about your dream last night.
Oh, it's strange. To be honest, I've forgotten most of it, but it just boils down to the fact that, and I said it was my dog, which it's not really it's my missus' dog, but I've grown up with it and I consider it my own. And it got into a fight with an otter, and it's weird because otters are like my favourite animal besides dogs. But obviously I defended the dog, who we call Harvey, and end up drop kicking the otter in the style of Petr Cech's kickouts. So
did you have awful distribution with the otter, or was it better than we've come to expect from Petr?
It got where it needed to go.
The RSPCA is knocking down your door as we speak, kicking otters all over the place. That's an interesting story, and it's funny because you remembered more about it when we spoke, which was probably within 2 minutes of you waking up, because I saw you tweet something, so I knew you had just woken up, because that's the first thing you do, obviously. And now you've forgotten all the rest of the details. So it's been 31 shows since your critically acclaimed Vagina Crime appearance on our airwaves back in August, in which, if you remember, you gave answers to questions I wasn't even asking. Have you missed us?
Well, I've seen you since. I've seen both of you since then. When you've come over across the pond to watch the Arsenal, it's always a pleasure. As it is with everyone who goes to the Pins or to the Toynton, mostly.
Mostly. Keyword mostly. In the meantime, you've had some pretty interesting interviews and guests on your podcast. You've had somewhere between 16 and 18 ACL surgeries. or at least it seems like it from all we've heard of it. And you've discovered 37 more starlets from small towns in Spain, France, and the Faroe Islands. So we refer to you in private as the Sven Misletat of football blogging.
Oh, really?
Much, yeah.
It's interesting because I don't think I've actually written anything since about January. So, which it's only February still, but that's quite a long time in blogging terms. But no, the ACL thing is so irritating because I genuinely hardly ever mentioned it, and for some reason you've latched onto it like a leech.
That's Andy. Andy is pretty good at finding the weak spot, whether it's a ligament or
hurt his own knee.
I did, and then you kept asking me about it, and I wouldn't answer you, so I didn't have to follow up with how's your knee. I was
tipped off by a source that will remain nameless.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't help that when I was over in December, we sat together for the second half of the Newcastle game, and you had to have like 3 seats so that you could stretch your leg out.
I had to move seats. I was sitting at the front row against Newcastle, and because if you're in the lower tier in the front row, the wall is so close it gives you
the worst seat for somebody with a knee injury to sit in.
It's about as much legroom as you get in the smallest hatchback in the world. And so I was texting you saying, Mike, I'm in a lot of pain here.
So the two times I've been Emirates with you, you've sat in the very first row and the very last row.
Yeah,
so
I was still getting told to sit down.
Maybe for Watford we'll have like club level seats, so we'll split the difference. We'll see. Yeah. I kind of doubt it though. So how are you preparing for that most anticipated time of year? I mean, when the Git and his gang of goofballs come over to England, I mean, it couldn't be more exciting to be looking forward to this for you, I'm sure.
Oh, I have to genuinely prepare myself a good 3 weeks before it occurs.
You better hurry because I leave it too.
Detach myself from everyone else and just get into the nuts and bolts of American culture, which is at the moment not that great to talk about.
No, it isn't. That's why I'm getting the hell out of here and coming over there. I mean, but for 2 weeks you ditch your girl, you ditch your dog, you ditch your otter, you ditch your job, and it's time to start a new life with us in London. So we do have the small matter of this little away cup tie in freezing Sweden to talk about. So, I mean, Andy, I'm glad that you were watching the game carefully because I kind of fell into a sleepy trance looking at the turf and all the Swedish women in the crowd. So I'm going to defer to you to walk us through the game and not a game that turned out too shabby for us.
No, it didn't. It did not. Let's start off with the match with the lineup.
Yeah, let's start off with the match.
I just didn't tell him. I wasn't paying attention, and I just heard you rambling, and I was like...
You can tell when you stop paying attention. It's so obvious.
So, with the lineup, I thought it was fairly strong. We see Chambers replacing Koscielny. We finally get to see Ainsley Maitland-Niles in the midfield role. Surprisingly, Mike, we see Ozil on the pitch, and Danny as a solo striker, and those were our big changes. Fairly strong, in my opinion. I thought Chambers had a rough match, but I think the biggest takeaway for me is we actually got to see Maitland-Niles in a position where he can thrive, and I thought he did just that.
That was the takeaway from this game is that he just seems to thrive and to play discipline in any position that Arsene sticks him in, and he's stuck him in a lot so far this season. If this is his natural position and that's his first taste at it, I'm interested in seeing what things are to come. I mean, this was Ostersunds, not Tottenham or Manchester City. But I was glad we went for it because, I mean, this is the game we needed to get ahead by a few goals and get away goals because next week's game is the one where it's 3 days before the cup final against the City side who themselves won 4-0 and probably be resting most of their first team. So, I hear rumors that Wenger's saying we're going to start a strong lineup, which means unchanged, next Thursday as well, which concerns me a little bit. But, as we all know, he knows best. So who am I to doubt him?
He does.
But Lacazette this game would have been tantalizing for his ass. I mean, he would have had 3 or 4 goals by himself. And, I just feel bad for Alexandre because it's turning into a star-crossed debut season for him.
Yeah, it's been kind of shitty for him, that's for sure. Tom, see a lot of the pre-match talk about the cold, the snow, the pitch. Should we buy into all that? It sounds like we have a similar pitch at our training facility. So should all those variables be a talking point? Is it why we didn't bang in 7?
Oh, when they stepped off the bus, it's great to see the fans. No. That's going to be like a private joke for people who used to listen all the way back. So there's a reward for that. But no,
it's a little Easter egg, isn't it?
An Easter egg, yes. You don't have your bell with you, do you, Michael? You do. He does. That's fantastic. I was going to use puns then now. So I thought it wasn't necessarily a cold night at Stoke. It was a cold night in Sweden. And I don't know if it really does affect the players that much. I mean, you talked there about, and there's been rumours that the hard pitches sort of can increase the risk of injury, and supposedly Welbeck didn't perform to his best because he's still a bit tentative on his feet about how he should perform on these hard pitches, and that it might open up his ironically injured knee. But no, I thought we handled it very well. Obviously on a slick hard surface, it suits our style of play with the passes, but I was overall impressed with how we played, and luckily it wasn't one for the likes of some newspapers to jump on the back of had we not have come away with a solid victory.
Yeah, and the pitch being artificial turf. I mean, I'm under the impression things have changed a lot in the last 30 years, because I'm under the impression that Sutton, who they're actually in the promotion hunt to get into the Football League, and I'll be there in a couple of weeks to give them that push over the edge. But I'm under the impression that they literally cannot be promoted unless they play next season a different pitch, because the Football League has a rule against 3G turf pitches. But, I mean, it wasn't so long ago in the first division days that Luton Town had a turf pitch at Kenilworth, and nobody made a fuss over it.
It's ironic because Wembley's got the fused pitch where they've got artificial turf integrated into the natural turf. So that's slightly ironic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that it's that big of a deal, but maybe a little bit harder on your knees. But if you like you said, Tom, I mean, if you're a possession kind of tiki-taka type of, or even anything remotely close to that with the passing game, I mean, it's going to suit you quite well to play on a pitch like that.
I mean, my own experience of playing on the pitches, and when I used to have a 7-a-side team with some of my boys from home, the amount of injuries did increase.
Isn't that how it all started going wrong for you?
Ironically, no. It was I did my knee playing indoor football on a completely hard flat surface. So anyway, we can move past that. But the 3G stuff, there's just no give really, because it's like this mold, isn't it? And when your studs go into it, there isn't really give like you get with obviously mud, and the wetter it gets, the more give it gives you. But I haven't necessarily known it to be a problem with like UEFA. Obviously, Shakhtar Donetsk, the Donbass Arena, play with an artificial pitch, and that was obviously fine for UEFA.
This is the worst name for an arena, by the way. The Dumbass Arena.
Dumbass. But yeah, it's a strange one. If Sutton obviously get promoted, I don't see why they should have to move, especially when trying to promote grassroots football. Allow these teams to take what they can get, and if it means that they use an artificial pitch, that should be fun.
Yeah, the only problem with the 3D pitches is that you have to wear those glasses. So.
I mean, I understand why we leave the likes of... Yeah, it's so stupid. I understand why we leave the likes of a Koscielny and Jack at home if the pitch is going to be of concern, and give them the opportunity to get a rest. And all in all, I don't really think the pitch played that big of a part in the game, because of the first 25 minutes. I mean, we were bossing the match. You could tell that they haven't had a competitive match for quite some time. I'm surprised that they found their rhythm, because otherwise it would have been a match where we saw 95% possession. But, they were, I think, Mike, very accustomed to an Arsenal style of defense, where they were just passing it to the other team in their own 18, as we were doing to Tottenham. But we just absolutely annihilated them to start the match, and we knocked on the door quite often. And then, all of a sudden, Ballon d'Or winner steps up and scores again. We're leading 1-0 with Nacho just letting everyone know that he is the greatest football player of all time.
Look, when you see our Lord and Savior Nacho motherfucking Monreal coming at you out of the corner of your eye as a goaltender, there's just no scenario where you're going to be able to cover the ball and not cough it up. I mean, some people may call it shit goalkeeping. I just call it being human. I mean, you can't focus on everything when you have a man that attractive and that skilled at football just charging at you. So, I mean, the Nacho phenomenon is amazing. I mean, you watch, I'm telling you, 20 years and 9 months from now, you're going to see a whole slew of kids named Nacho breaking into the Premier League for various clubs.
Guys, we're sitting
Nacho
right
Gixxer.
now.
I mean, you're gonna see all these different Nachos.
We're witnessing and seeing something in football that's very, very special. And never again in our lifetimes will we have a player as good as Nacho Monreal that will grace our pitch. I'm sorry, but it just won't happen.
And what is he on? Like 70 grand a week? I mean, he's going to easily ask for 700,000 now.
The money doesn't matter to him, Mike. That's what separates him from the rest as well. He would do it for free. He would do it for free. The applause we give him is enough.
How come you didn't discover him, Tom?
Yeah, Tom.
That would have been a good one for you.
Oh, to be fair, he was decent at Malaga before he made the move. So, I mean, I knew who he was. I wouldn't say I was an expert in him, but I can see why we bought him when we did. And I remember that game. Obviously, we signed him in January, and I think we signed him, and he played only like the day after he signed. I can't remember who he was against.
Well, he's a robot. I mean, he's superhuman.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, he's a great player. He's fantastically consistent. He's improved every season, and now he's added more goals to his game, which is fantastic. And as you say, Ballon d'Or winner. I mean, he is one of the most, if not the most, consistent defender in the league this season, and amongst the likes of Jan Vertonghen and not only mentioning Spurs players, but even Manchester City as well. So I love the guy, not just because he's Spanish, but just the way
because he's so hot.
Yeah, well, not in that way, but yeah.
So
he's a 5-tool player. He's got
sexually,
everything.
Tom is attracted to Nacho Monreal.
That's what we've learned.
Right.
You know, the best thing about Nacho is the amount of pressure he's been under in that position. So for the longest time, he had Gibbs kind of nipping at his heels, and he kept the starting spot. Then we bring in arguably one of the best left back players in the Bundesliga last season, and he just gives two shits, you know? So I say we bring in Messi, I say we bring in Ronaldo, and we'll see Nacho probably bang 40 goals in. That's am I overreacting here, Mike?
No, yeah, you're asking me whether you're overreacting? No, I don't think so at all.
So we go up 2-0 with an own goal. It was a nice cross that hit a defender before Danny could get his boot on the ball. Another quiet match for Danny, and Mike, we'll talk about the goal in a minute, but is there a bigger issue here with us seeing now Lacazette, Aubameyang, and Welbeck having very quiet matches with very little distribution, or did Danny just have another off night, and maybe we're starting to see a player that just isn't finding his groove at the Arsenal?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. Whatever that was you said at the second part of that sentence. I mean, Aubameyang had a quiet match against Spurs because, I mean, we had absolutely no plan or method of getting him the ball in a danger area. We had Ozil out on the wing instead of distributing. And so, I mean, with the exception of that one run he made early in the game where they called a bullshit offsides call on him, I don't know that you pin that on Aubameyang, but Danny had a quiet day yesterday, despite us having the ball in their final third for like 97.5% of the game. So if I happen to run into him in March, I'm going to walk the guy to Turkey myself. I can't believe we're in the position of starting him, and I'm not even going to tempt fate by wondering what would happen in the league if anything happened to Aubameyang right now. I'm just not going to tempt fate by even bringing that up. Okay? I really think... And I know I'm not the only one, but it would have been better to start Nketiah up top in this match. And we better, goddamn, give him a try there next Thursday. I mean, what do you have to lose than Welbeck at this point? I mean, he's had his moments in his time at Arsenal, the goal against United in the Cup, goal against Leicester on Valentine's Day a couple years ago. Whoever those Salt Bay goals were against was pretty fun. But, I mean,
man. Swansea. Was that Southampton, I think that was.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, during the FA Cup, that was the one where him and I think Theo scored a bunch of goals.
Yeah,
which,
Theo's got a hat trick, I think. Yeah.
But I mean, he's fault.
Andy remembers that game fondly.
Yeah,
we had to act last week to Kevin Campbell like we were big Theo fans because we did a very poor job of it. And Kevin, if you happen to be listening, we are big Theo fans. We're now acting like we're not because it impresses Tom. But I mean, Danny's fallen off a cliff talent-wise lately, and no amount of work rate is going to make up for it. So, I mean, Tom, is Welbeck finished?
I think he's one of the only players, or not that's probably too harsh, but he's a £16 million player when we bought him, and I don't think he's increased in value even in this market, is the best way to put it.
How old is he?
How old is he?
Yeah, I mean, does he have? Is he of the age that would have resale value normally, or did we buy a guy that? I mean, I keep hearing
Danny Welbeck is 27 years old.
Right, so he should be in his prime right now.
Yeah, he should be in his prime, but he's not had the years at a top club where he's consistently playing minute in, minute out. It's not. If he was at Manchester United still, when Jose Mourinho says that if he have been the manager at Manchester United when they sold Welbeck, he wouldn't have personally sold him. He felt that he could have got more out of him, and we brought him into a team which had Olivier Giroud and Theo Walcott, and we were never, as a club, we were looking for someone to be a top-class striker, which didn't happen until we finally signed, or supposedly signed, a top-class striker in Lacazette. But he's never got the chance to be able to continuously nail down that starting spot, not just through inconsistencies, but through obviously an ironic knee injury and just the consistent injuries
We've
going on.
We've subconsciously built this show around talking about players with that ACL injury. So Theo, when he was on the stretcher, what did you think about that?
Yeah. I enjoyed the sign he gave the Spurs fans, but obviously my sympathy pains went so far. I decided to do my own ACL in homage.
Did you?
That moment. Yeah, it was self-inflicted.
I wish Danny Welbeck luck at Besiktas or Fenerbahce or whatever Bache he ends up going to. But Andy, I mean, are you? By the way you asked the question, I think you're kind of leaning that way as well. But I mean, what's your Danny?
I think it falls under the just category of players who are playing in a system where they're not coached. And unfortunately, we're going to see players like Danny, probably Holding or Chambers, if not both, leave the club and go on to be better players. I mean, I know it's still early in his Liverpool career, but look how different Chamberlain is. I mean, we're seeing Chamberlain set up goals. We're seeing him get in the mix. I mean, he's...
Are we?
Yeah, we are, Mike. So it's difficult, and
I turn off the television every time he comes in as a
I'm not saying that like he's turned into a world beater, but he's turning into a player that's showing consistent performances on the pitch. And I always think Danny's best position is when you put him out left, you allow him to use his speed. Tom, maybe you'll disagree, but I just think he falls under that umbrella of another player that we have not gotten the best out of because of injury and because we don't have the coaches that are giving him the opportunity to learn and grow and give him the guidance.
I agree in the part that we don't have the right coaching, but it goes across for loads of different players. I can see what you're saying about Alexis Oxlade-Chamberlain, as he's now going to be called.
Might as well.
But I mean, Chambers has got 3 goals and 3 assists so far this season in 27 matches. So I don't know whether we can turn around and say it was a mistake to let Chamberlain go. I certainly don't think it was for the money that we paid. But if Welbeck is just someone who's a utility player for us, who's someone that provides depth for us, and I think it's a point now where we can't settle on just Welbeck. We need to be ruthless, and we have been. We're bringing in Lacazette and now Aubameyang as well.
Yeah, and maybe his defensive, consciousness does help a guy like a Nacho Monreal, not have to do as much as the season before when Nacho was constantly on the same side as Alex Iwobi, who did not do the same work defensively that a Welbeck did. But yeah, I mean, lovely guy, but I'm going to cringe through this next couple of rounds of Europa, if we should get that far, that he's the guy that's obviously going to be starting up top. And I think, I just don't see Wenger making the call to keep him on the bench in favor of Nketiah at this point.
The problem with Danny is when he's off, he's off. When he's on, he's on. And so hopefully he gets a run of matches where he turns it on, because then he's a very deadly player. But a lot of people gave him a lot of shit because we sold Giroud and not him, and you have to look at.
Well, no one was asking for him.
Well, that, but you also have to look at the fact that Danny can offer you 2 or 3 different positions, whereas Giroud really can only play one. So if you're going to get rid of a player, and it was very clear that Chelsea needed that type of a striker. So we go into halftime 2-0 up. Ostersunds appeared to be up for the second half. They had a lot more open of a match. They forced Ospina into a big save pretty early. They decided to go a little bit high pressure on us, which we've seen in the last couple months. Our defensive pairing in the back cannot really handle. I don't know what it is with Chambers, just holding, and then putting himself into the worst position, just get rid of the ball. But
because he's not good.
Yeah, what really impressed me, guys, is a team that maybe have very limited facilities, very limited players. You could see glimpses of why they're in this stage of the Europa League. I mean, they're not a bad side. It looks like their manager and their coaching staff, have been obviously out of training, but they were up for this when they got into the rhythm, and you could tell they're a decent side. I mean, they're not bad, and you got to give credit to them. They could have easily folded at 2-0, and they really tried to push this back.
Yeah, I mean, I got the one where Ospina had to tip the ball over the bar because it was dipping and heading in. That game goes to 2-1 at that point, and it's on. And that was a huge save. But I mean, you don't get this far in any European competition without, with that level of talent, without playing as a team above their individual talent, which is good coaching. But like Matthias pointed out last week, I mean, they went undefeated against Hertha Berlin. Galatasaray, they beat Bilbao once during this run. I mean, I don't know if they're good, but they certainly had their shit together. But like you said before, though, I mean, the Swedish season is a different season. It starts in March or April, and it goes until November. So during the group stage and the qualification stage, they were right smack dab in the middle of their season, warmed up and ready to go. Season ended after match day 4, and obviously you're still sharp for match day 5 and 6, but it's been 2 months since their last competitive match, and it showed, thankfully for us, because otherwise we might have had our hands full.
Tom, this question goes to you. If you're looking at 2019, you've got Graham Porter and Nacho Monreal. What could not go wrong with that combination? I mean, let's just bring him in as manager of Arsenal.
What could not go wrong?
What could not go wrong? Well, I mean, what could not go wrong? What else should I would say, really? To be fair, what Potter's done there, if we just talk seriously, if I may, for a moment, about it is incredible. They said, and it is a fair description, it's the same as like Forest Green getting promoted all the way up and then achieving European football. What he's done at that club is insane. And I mean, you can see the size of them compared to the others when you just see their stadium. I mean, just the pictures that we were getting from some of the fans, and there are big clubs in Sweden, and there are, and what they've gone about their business is fantastic. Obviously, they knocked out Galatasaray on the way to get into Arsenal. I didn't know that before the game, but after I was told that 50 times by the commentator, I certainly knew it afterwards. They'd knocked out Galatasaray, and obviously they were in a group with Athletic Bilbao and Hertha Berlin, and got through that as group leaders, I believe it was. So it really is a testament to Potter, what he's done, and I can't imagine that he will be there for much longer, because you can see a League One or Championship club wanting to get him in, see what he can do in England.
Yeah.
And he's a unique character. I mean, his experience, his path after his playing days is unlike any manager that I've ever seen. I mean, the psychology that he pursued and the education that he pursued on psychology and leadership is unique. I mean, he's got a bright future ahead of him, I think.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. It's a great story.
He's going to end up taking Ostersund to the Champions League final. Is what is going to. That's what's going to happen. He's a loyal son of a bitch.
Oh yeah. There's no doubt about that. But is he as loyal as Nacho Monreal is to the Arsenal badge? I'm not sure. So we have a third goal go in. Ozil, Mike. The thing is, I didn't think he would play. I didn't think his bones were strong enough to play in such cold weather. We
consulted with his doctor before the game.
Yeah.
His what do you call the rheumatologist?
Yeah.
I should know that. My stepfather.
He scores, Mike. We've seen it all. We have seen it all. The guy is second to Nacho, the greatest player in the world.
He took 8 doses of Fosamax before the game to bulk up his bones. He drank like 29,000 glasses of milk, and after the game, he was seen boarding a flight from Stockholm to Bora Bora for another 2-week vacation. So, and I got to say, this time he deserves it. Go ahead, just be back for the Brighton game because I want to see him play again this year.
Arsene said to him, "If you play in this match, I'll give you an extra week of holiday."
In February.
Yeah. So, overall, a great match, but.
Would you say Nacho is God at this point? I mean, I don't mean to be sacrilegious, but I mean, would you pray and sacrifice things to him at this point?
Yeah, I think he's great. Clearly, Mike, we've been talking about it now for a good 25 minutes, but he deserves a statue.
Definitely. All right. Just checking.
So the last big part of this match was the penalty save. Did you know it's been 45 years since you've seen a penalty saved at Arsenal?
In none of our lifetimes has there ever been a penalty save. Well, it's been 5 years, which is long enough.
That's so long.
Considering how many penalties we give up, and have called against us for little to no reason. So, yeah, that's what a piss take that was. I knew he was going to save that, too. If I could have gotten the tweet out fast enough, I would have, because how fucking Arsenal is that we finally get a penalty save, and it's in, like, one of the 8 to 10% of the games that Petr Cech isn't playing in. And so right after that happened, I tweeted out a poll, and I'm curious about your views on this. 60th minute of a Premier League game, let's say Watford in a couple weeks. It's tied 0-0, or we're up 1-0 in a really close game, and we get a penalty called against us. And we've got 2, or if it's in the 60th minute, presumably we have all 3 of our subs left. Do you sub in Ospina for Cech for the rest of the game, starting with facing that penalty, and then just ride it out? Tom.
It's tempting.
I'm not saying would it ever happen, because it's obviously.
Oh no! Would I do it? Yeah. Van Gaal style, Tim Krul in
yeah.
Was that the World Cup? Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that was for a penalty shootout, though. That wasn't just like in the middle of the 90 minutes to face one penalty.
I mean, part of me would want to for the comedy value, but then the more logical side of me still thinks no, because as soon as maybe if he finally gets that save, it would do wonders for his confidence, because Cech's confidence at the moment is really on the floor. And
to provide him with that, we're gonna let in 14 more consecutive corner penalty kicks until that happens.
Well, I think to be fair, conceding another 5 or 10 or 15 wouldn't do as much harm to his confidence as being subbed off David Ospina in the 6th.
Tom, that's a very, very good point. Andy, as our resident keeper expert on the podcast, if you were Cech, how would that make you feel? Knowing how
it depends what's on the line, right? If you're going into like the final
early game
match
against Watford,
yeah, but if we win that match and get the 3 points, are we winning the league? Is it just another match where we get 3 points? There's a bunch of variables, but I think if you would never do it. You wouldn't waste the sub on it, but there's something obviously wrong with Cech when it comes to penalty save. Like how he doesn't work on them, how he doesn't.
He must tip. He must have a tell.
He must. But the guy who took the penalty, there were pictures going around on social media of him in an Arsenal kit with his kid. Was that doctored?
He wasn't in an Arsenal kit, but his kid was, and I think he was holding his kid in front of him. But I don't think that was doctored at all. I mean, who wouldn't? From Sweden, you'd be an Arsenal supporter if you're of that age, because of the reason that Matthias said. I mean, other than Ibrahimovic, who wasn't playing in England at the time. I mean, we had the Swedish players, or at least the good Swedish players.
Yeah. Let's stay with Ospina for a minute.
I will just tell you that poll was 82% yes, I would sub him out, and 18% no. We have a lot of football managers in our listener base.
So, Tom, a lot of shit was being given to Ospina before the match because he was made captain. For you,
nice fans doing that.
Yeah, right. It's a surprise. Considering nobody yells at anyone when shit hits the fan on the pitch anyway, does it matter who has our captain's armband? And why not Ospina?
I mean, I don't think it matters to Wenger this season. If you think about the amount of people that have taken the armband this season, we've had Wilshere, Walcott, obviously Ospina, Koscielny. I'm sure Mertesacker probably would have taken it at one point when he played with that Koscielny there. Probably I think Czech might have as at one point as well. So it must be a record now, I think, for the amount of captains we've had in one season up to this point, and we're not even 3/4 of the way through. So does it matter to me if Ospina gets it? Not particularly. I'm not going to go on Twitter and be like, this is a disgrace. This is another thing to beat Wenger's back with. But so what if he's captain? It doesn't seem to make a difference on the pitch. We've got no leaders in our team, to be honest, anyway. So it is pretty artificial in terms of how effective putting the armband on someone is. I mean, the ironic thing is I don't think Ospina can even still speak that much English. So I don't know how effective his call-outs would have been to the team. It's been like, come on, guys, and that's about it, really.
Well, the referee was from Spain, so maybe the Spanish element there. But, of course, he could have also given it to Nacho in that case, who might have been one of two people that probably deserved the armband more than anyone else.
Can you imagine how cold that ref must have been? And thinking we were moaning about how cold it was coming from England, and we've got this Spanish referee in the middle of the park shivering away.
Yeah, but who's going to feel sorry for that guy?
Okay, fair enough. I mean, the amount of fouls he didn't give for Ostersunds when Mustafi took out their winger, running down that left flank, completely took him out, and then we got a free kick. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I was surprised he actually called the penalty at the end of the game because he didn't seem to really. He seemed to have it in for Ostersund for some reason.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that we no longer have the option to give the armband to Theo because that. That didn't go so hot.
I would have liked Ozil to have got it that game, to be honest, after signing a new deal. I would have been quite happy to get it.
So last thing on the match, man of the match, Tom, who would you give it to?
I want to give it, obviously, I'd love to give it to Nacho, but because it was such an attacking flurry of chances, I want to give it to Mickey. Another 2 assists. Obviously, the own goal and the one he set out Ozil for, which leaves him on 5 assists in 4 games. I mean, if he had issues supposedly with Ozil before he joined, I mean, those two are going to have a bit of competition to get the most assists by the end of the season. So I thought he was great again. I thought he was trying to make amends for obviously not the best performances in the North London derby. He was trying to have shots. We have often criticised people for not taking enough shots, and he was really trying to whip those balls in and take enough chances at goal as well. So yeah, I think Mickey's been absolutely great since coming in, to be honest, besides the North London derby, which is obviously disappointing. But considering the player that he has to replace, I think that the impact that he's had on the side has made the loss of Alexis much less hard on us.
Yeah, absolutely. And he would have been my man of the match as well. I thought that he was really itching for that first goal, and you could just tell that he's just playing on a different level right now, and I think he's playing on that level to prove to the likes of Mourinho and the United fans, look what you're missing. But I also think he's playing at that level because he loves this club. He has for a long time, and he's excited to be here. And like you said, it makes Alexis leaving a little bit easier when you have a player who's contributed 5 assists already.
It makes it a lot easier.
Very short career. And, I really love the fact that he had recently just said that he thought Ozil was the greatest number 10 to play in that role, and you wouldn't have that from an Alexis type of player. Like, they would never say something like that about one of your teammates. And so, he's saying all the right things, whether or not he means it. I'm sure he does, but having those two in the game together is just absolutely wonderful. But for me, he was my man of the match. Mike, who was yours?
I mean, just to say somebody different, I'll go with Ainsley Maitland-Niles. I mean, nothing too flashy and not necessarily part of our attack in the game, but I mean, just a solid performance in a position he hasn't yet played this season, even if it's his natural position. I'm just excited. He's definitely in line to be my next huge overreaction.
Would you start at defensive midfield in that seemingly we're playing this 4-3-3 with a deeper lying centre mid behind the two in front? Would you play him in the cup final over the likes of El Neni?
Only if he plays in the second leg against Ostersunds and builds more confidence. And he's young enough that playing on Thursday and then again on Sunday I don't think is a real problem for him, whereas it would be for virtually everybody else on our squad. I don't know that I would, just based off that one performance in a game, against Ostersund one time, that I would feel comfortable in that situation. As long as El Neni does the job that he's supposed to do, I'd probably go there. But in a league game, absolutely. I mean, the guy keeps having performances that are exceptional for his age and experience level wherever he's put. And I think you got to ride that for a little while until he starts showing signs of getting a little jaded, a la what happened with Iwobi last year, and then you got to pull the trigger a little quickly and just, give him a blow for a couple of games and let him catch back up. But yeah, maybe not for the cup final, but after that, I'd like to see him back in there.
See, now I would play him in the cup final because we have two center backs that have a tendency to play a high line, and there were a couple times yesterday where he used his speed to recover and really help those center defenders. And so I haven't seen anything yet in his game where we've seen holes. He hasn't had an out-and-out just mare of a match, and we all thought it would come against Liverpool when he played Salah, and he did well. He held his own. So I definitely would, and I think that we would have the opportunity then to really rotate our center mids and give Jack, Aaron, Xhaka opportunity to rest. I mean, we need nothing more right now than someone who can really, really sit in front of those defensive line and just give them some cover. And I don't see why it can't be him.
Someone who has speed to get back if he's pushed too far forward.
Now, I do agree. He is young. He hasn't played in the magnitude of matches in that position, but he's played in these big matches as a left back. So if he can do it there, why can't he do it as a central defensive mid?
And my my non-tactic ass needs to ask both of you guys a question because and I also had really only one eye on the game today because I was in the middle of some stuff at work. But with him and El Neni in the squad together today, who was was there one of them camping out in front of the back four and was El Neni the one that was pushing further forward? I didn't really get a sense of that. But obviously, you don't expect the two of them to be in there at the same time.
No, Tom, I'll let you go there.
I don't think it's. I think that El Neni's the one who sits in more. El Neni's actually someone I've been really impressed with recently. I love his drive. I thought it was quite comedic when he said that we could still win the title a couple of weeks back.
He's getting known for kind of outlandish statements, I think.
Yeah, I know, but I kind of like that, and I like that he's got the confidence, and obviously he seemingly is very optimistic. I'm sure that the club will drum that out of him fairly soon. But I like him a lot. I think he gets a lot of stick from what he gives. The classic, he's only a £5 million player, I think is a load of rubbish because I think he's given us a lot more than what that money is worth in today's market. I think he's very calm. People complain about the fact that you can only pass sideways and he doesn't ever give anything going forwards. But I think he does more than that. I think it's something that sometimes we miss, just those balls inside. I mean, the amount of times Alexis Sanchez should give the ball away in our own half, maybe we should be a bit more satisfactory about the fact that someone can pass the ball accurately to their teammate. So I think, to relate back to your question, El Neni's the one who is...
I was hoping you would eventually do that.
El Neni... Sorry.
Oh! Jesus.
Gooner's very excited.
I think you just said El Neni in dog. But So yes, what was really the relationship on the positioning on the pitch? But I haven't looked at any heat maps, so I don't really know the answer to this.
I mean, I haven't either, so I couldn't tell you like conclusively. But I think El Neni is the one that sits deeper. There you go. That's my answer.
Well, in that case, have we really seen Ainsley Maitland-Niles at the defensive holding midfield spot? That's I guess the point of the question.
No, I don't think we have. I
think we've seen enough of him, from yesterday's match. We saw enough of him track back, play deep. So I think there's a glimpse, but I would like to see him play in that second leg with El Neni not on the pitch. Let's give him that freedom to reign and be that true deepest player. I also like what he offers when we go forward, because there were a couple times where he did get on his horse and get up, and he is so fast. He does have brilliant vision, and really, I want to see him in the match with Xhaka higher up the pitch. I think that would just be wonderful for Arsenal.
There we go,
and we start to see the birth.
Xhaka's awful.
No, I think we're all in the same camp on Xhaka here. We don't have to have any arguments, the Xhaka arguments. But yeah, I mean, what he offers going forward, we don't really know yet, but we saw a glimpse of it in that Newcastle game. Tom, you were doubled over in pain, but what I saw was him just slicing through the Newcastle defense and missing the goal by just like a foot and a half wide of the bar. So I mean, if he's got that in his locker, then I'm excited to see it. So we have one general talking point, and it's all the rage in the last 24 hours. So we have to cover it, and especially because we've had a couple of these guys on our podcast within the last month or so. But it's Hector Bellerin and Arsenal Fan TV time, and everyone's freaking out and over exaggerating and misunderstanding and misquoting and overreacting and getting all crazy about it. But I wrote down the full quote, and I'm not going to do it in the interest of time, but it was kind of it weaved in between criticism and just some reality statements that of what it means to him and what it doesn't mean to him, which he's perfectly entitled to say. So we've had Robbie on the podcast a couple times, and the reason I like when he comes on the podcast, it's not because I'm a huge fan of the content that they put out or of all the content that they put out. I'm just intrigued by the whole background and the story and the whole sociological aspect of it. I like him. I think he's a good person. The recurring stars of a lot of the post-game rants, a lot of those people, maybe not so much, but, I'm just fascinated by it. And Hector's comments, which, have brought on a lot of negative abuse of him, which I think is just in some cases absolutely disgusting and hypocritical. I think his comments were, for the most part, measured, very mature. It showed judgment completely in contrast to his decision making on his hair. And it was enlightening to get the player perspective. And he may not speak for all players, but to get the players' perspective on how they view this phenomenon that's going on. Whether you like it or not, whether they listen to the noise around them, I paid a guy to go to that Oxford interview session to ask what the players thought of our show and like how it affects them on and off the pitch. But the guy just took our money and he didn't show up. So thank you, Ola, son of a bitch. But, how can you listen to those comments and then just slag off Bellerin for complaining about people criticizing him, which he didn't do, or calling hardcore fans, not real fans, which that's a matter of opinion. And I can see why that might get under people's skin. But I mean, it's just like the Adam Crafton situation. If you're in the business of getting clicks or watches or views, whether you're a journalist, a podcaster, a blogger, or a ranter, or let's say a content producer, you got to be willing to take the good with the bad and not get so butthurt by it.
Well, here's the deal, Mike.
Yeah, and
the guys at Arsenal Fan TV are creating a platform for them to make money and become famous. And again, we've had Robbie on this pod twice. As a person, we love him. He's now doing that as a business. Good for him. The characters of the people that are on that show are only doing it to create drama. I completely agree with Bellerin. You can't call yourself a super fan when you're 100% of the time ragging on the players and just being an absolute asshat about every result we get. We could win 3-0, but it was only against Palace. And it's like there's never an absolute there's nothing happy for these guys, and they're only on that platform to do it to make money because they know it's clickbait, right? John Cross will write an absolute ridiculous article that means nothing. Like yesterday, the Sun wrote an article about Arsen's extravagant needs when he got to Sweden. He asked for
that
a
bottle of scotch.
bottle of scotch. It's not that big of a deal. You know what I mean? It's something for him to embrace the culture of Ostersunds. That's what they should have done, and that's what they should have said. Is old guy wants to embrace culture with bottle of scotch or whatever, but that doesn't sell a newspaper.
Old guy.
So at the end of the day, I completely think that Bellerin's comments are spot on, and if I'm one of those guys who has made a lot of money and created a character, I'd be embarrassed a little bit because clearly these players think and talk about it. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to – I hate the argument of you're a bigger fan because you go to matches and all that crap. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, everyone's an equal fan. Some have just been fans longer than others. But some people are getting money and monetary value off of the negativity, and it doesn't help the club. It's actually quite embarrassing, and I think Hector was spot on.
All right, and I respect your opinion. I differ in some ways with a lot of it, but I want to go to Tom first, and then I'll kind of wrap back around.
We don't have to get into a huge debate about this either.
No.
We all know the differing of opinion, but from Hector, we should really the focus shouldn't be on those clowns. It should really be on, is Hector in a position to be saying this? Should he be saying this in public? And I think he's spot on. I think he's allowed to do it.
Oh, no question. I don't have any problem with what Hector said. Tom, what are your thoughts on the whole bubbling controversy that's still going on as everybody's woken up in the UK this morning?
I mean, the bottom line for me is I think that Bellerin, as Andy said, is completely well within his rights to have his own opinion on it. And like he said at the end of his quote, that the people who are on Arsenal Fan TV, I went all German then, are entitled to their opinion as well. And that's what's the key thing. That's the bottom line. I mean, I have to be careful when I talk about Arsenal Fan TV. I think people know my opinion of it. Obviously, I've got some extremely close friends who are regulars on it in both the leagues. So, and obviously Kenny Kenner used to go on it a fair amount as well. But I think that there's been some interesting tweets that have come out from it. I'm not going to give this person credit because I don't particularly like them, but they said that 3,000 fans sang "You're not fit to wear the Arsenal shirt" at the Palace game when me and Mike, we were both there. Yeah. And I'll be honest and say that I got caught up in the anger and I even sung it as well. And Hector Bellerin was one of the people that walked over, and all the fans, including myself, were still singing that song.
Yeah, it wasn't directed at him, but he took the brunt of it.
Of course, it was directed at the entire club, and he's come over to congratulate, but appreciate the fan support for coming all the way to Palace to watch our team lose 3-0. And he's had to take that on the chin. And I think that Arsenal Fan TV and the people who are on it and their supporters and their fans need to take this on the chin and just be like, okay, fair enough. That's his opinion. Let's just move on about it. There's no point sitting around and having major issues with it. My other major issue was that the ringleading guest that goes on there said that Arsenal Fan TV has been going for 5 years. In that time, our Premier League record is played 217, 123, drawn 49, lost 45. Surely they should have shut down by now if all they do is feed our defeats. Oh, and we ended our trophy drought and won 3 FA Cups in that time. Now, that's all well and good, but this is the same person that's using our recent record to blight our current manager and say he should be sacked. You can't use it for one thing and then twist it and try and use our recent record to back up why Arsenal Fan TV should still be around. There's a lot of overreaction that's happened because of it. And there's a lot of opinions that have been twisted and words been used incorrectly about it. But at the end of the day, and as Andy said, and as I'm saying now, Bellerin is completely within his right. And I've seen people say that he should be sold for it, which is laughable.
Well, there's been a lot worse said about it, which is ridiculous.
I know. And it is a shame. It is a shame.
And I just want to quickly say, because we do have close friends on the pod, or who come on this pod, who we share text messages with daily, and it's not, my comments weren't blasted to everyone that goes on that show. Like Tom just said, it's the ringleaders, the characters that were created. I mean, when you look at someone like Lee, that's Lee. That's who he is on Facebook. That's who he is on our podcast. That's who he is when he goes on your pod, ABW. That's just who he is. That's
His
not
pod.
that's not a different character.
Same old
Yeah. And I think yesterday we were chatting, the three of us and Ola, and I think the best comment was that platform should really rotate. If it was a true platform of just getting the fans' views, they would rotate. They would say, here's 10 different people and maybe one or two like every fourth week who's a regular. But it's not. It's based around 2 or 3 ringleaders who create this mass hysteria when it comes to our club because most people just latch on to their opinion. So that's where I have a problem with it. It's interview more people. I mean, Mike went on there, and the biggest comment on YouTube was, "This fucking American doesn't know football." Well, that's not fair. In that situation, it was very true. He doesn't.
To be fair, when we did the interview in New Orleans about the podcast, when he was on our turf, the comments, I read through them. They weren't that bad, actually. I was surprised. There wasn't as much American bashing on there as I expected, but. My view is it's unfortunate what's happened because the idea was just a world beater of an idea to get fans' perspective, to get people who aren't normally able to be heard express their opinions. It's no one's real fault that it happened during a period of time where Arsenal's kind of been on the decline, with the exception of the FA Cups. But the issue is, a lot of people. And I'm going to give both sides of this in my own mind. A lot of people identify Arsenal Fan TV as being those post-game rants from those 3 people. That's not all it is. But they've dug themselves a hole in one regard, which is that's what people are clicking on. That's what 10 times, 5 times as many people are clicking on. And it's as a business, even a business built around fun and passion, that can't be ignored, and it's ultimately what leads to the reputation. They can't. And I watched this morning because Robbie did kind of as he normally does when there's a controversy. He did about a 10 or 15 minute kind of here's my message to Beller, and it was mostly Beller, and we love you. You have every right to say what you said, but here's why I think I disagree with part of what you said. And ultimately, one thing he says is true, which is yes, they record content to make money. But if they're only out to thrive on the failures of the club, if that was their primary goal, even now that they realize that it's what sells, they wouldn't have come to New Orleans. They wouldn't have, they wouldn't be taping, segments and stuff in Athens or, going to LA for the summer tour and interviewing fans. I mean, the intent to create money off of our failure, I think, is what's misunderstood. I don't think there's an intent, but they've certainly worked themselves into a situation where by many, many times the views on the content that they put out that's negative and that's aggressive and ranty and and clicks with people because it's so raw and pure and usually negative. That's what people are clicking on, and the only way that they could get out of it is doing exactly what the two of you have just said, and spreading it around more rather than relying on characters. And maybe that would hurt the profitability of the channel. Maybe that would hurt the clicks of the channel, and whether they've analyzed that or not, I don't know. But I think that would be the only way to get back, if it's not already too late to get back, to really being what the original mission of the channel was. And that's I like some of the people. I dislike some of the people. I think people are way too hard on them from an objective standpoint, but from a emotional standpoint, I get it, and I understand why people don't like it. So
I think that Andy and yourself, you brought up fantastic points about it, and the thing about rotation is key. I think in terms of it, I think you made a great point about saying if they only cared about the negative side of things, as you say, they wouldn't go off and do that. But at the same time, if that was their sole argument against what Bellerin's saying, if that were the case, they would spread it around more. They wouldn't name the people who are in their videos. They would just say this is a fan's opinion. They wouldn't create these celebrity fan people, and it wouldn't happen that way. I mean, a key.
So I think that probably happened by accident.
Oh, I'm sure it did at first, but it's been latched onto, and it's been galvanized, and it's been emphasized so much more in order to create these. They know that people are going to click on certain characters, and I think they do it in the wrong way, because I think they should promote the people which ultimately are speaking both the best and most tactically, and not just shouting and screaming and being provocative. And I think that's proven in the fact that if you know someone that I do who goes on there called Graham Brooks, who is absolutely fantastic, he has been, and I searched the other day because I was curious. I searched at Arsenal Fan TV and I searched the word Graham, and 5 videos come up. Now I can tell you he goes on there a hell of a lot more than just those 5 videos, and he speaks tactically, he speaks fluently, he speaks brilliantly, and if he deserves as much viewership as what the highest viewing characters on there get, but he doesn't get it because he's not promoted anywhere near as much as what the others are, because he isn't what gets them the most views. So that's where I take. Yeah,
and they're expanding their programming into podcast one-on-one. I mean, they're basically doing a lot of things beyond the post and pregame segments, which tend to focus around 1, 2, 3 people, and that's where you can clearly see it's a market plan. Yeah, it's a strategy, and that's unfortunately, I think, that's where they probably deserve a bit of grief that they should be perfectly happy to take and just brush off because they're doing their thing, and I think they have every right to do it. If people don't like it, they shouldn't listen. But there's fault to go around everywhere in it, and I think they should just keep doing what they're doing, and people should get a thicker skin about it. But I certainly understand the frustration, and I think Bellerin's comments. When you start talking about whether people are real fans or not, no matter who you are, whether you're, an Arsenal in person, an Arsenal out person, a player, an Arsenal Fan TV, when you start questioning the fandom of people, it's a raw subject that's always going to get you into controversy. And that may be the part of what Bellerin said that was probably less than, advisable, but he's got every right to say it.
I agree with you. I think the podcast thing you said was great. I mean, that's the key thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
The new if you want a great hour's worth of chat about football, not only listen to the Gooners in USA podcast, but you see that little plug there, but also go. You don't go and ask DT and say I want you on for a podcast. If you want a great hour's worth of chat about football, you go ask someone like Graham Brooks or Lee Judges. They're the type of people that you go and ask if you want to chat about football in depth really well. If you want to get a reactionary, angry, emotional hours worth of football chat, then you go to that's going to get a lot of views. Then you do go to those people, and that's what happens. But no, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, that's true, and I think that's any last words, Andy, or do we move on to our user questions?
No, I think we're all good
This
there.
Is the part where he checked out.
No,
all right,
sorry,
so
I was on mute.
We got user questions, and we're bringing back for today. We've kind of floated in and out of this, but we're bringing back the Bag of Dicks segment today with our good sponsor, Bag of Dicks. We tend to kind of minimize that when we have reputable guests on, and then when we have people like Tom, we go back to the Bag of Dicks. But so I'm going to read the questions, and we're going to go through them. And I'm not going to say who the questions are from, even though you may already have seen them on Twitter. I'm not going to say who they're from until the end, because, Tom, you get to pick the winner of the super Bag of Dicks that's going to be sent out.
First question, mine, by the way.
Well, but you've got to win. They don't just grow on – dicks don't grow on trees, All right, so the first question is, which loanee would you like to bring back to Arsenal next season if you had to choose at least one? And I did a little bit of scouting, and there's probably about 7 people that are up for the running here. Emi Martinez, Christian Bielik, Cohen Bramall, Jenko, Campbell, Joel Campbell, not Kevin Campbell, Lucas, and Chuba Akpom. So
Lucas Perez, hands down. no doubt about it. He would be starting that game against Ostersunds ahead of Welbeck. Well, he should be. I don't know whether he would be. But yeah, I think it was moronic how we've treated him. It's moronic the lack of game time he got, and I think that had he been playing in a team with the likes of Mkhitaryan and Ozil, providing fantastic chances for him, he would have been scoring goals a lot more consistently than what Welbeck has. Yeah, Andy, what do you think?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, I mean that actually is kind of a, of those 7, that's pretty obvious. Who would be your, if he wasn't available, who would you take? You don't need a whole long explanation about it.
No, probably Joel then. I just think he adds an attacking threat. I think he's kind of the same as Lucas. Every time he plays, he does well, and I think that he adds more to a match than the likes of Theo or someone in that nature.
Is Bielik just not as good as he was supposed to end up being? I mean, it's been 2, 3, 4 years now.
He's still very young, and when he was brought in, there was a big thing about he wasn't physical enough. That's why they started playing him at centre-back to try and build up that strength. So I still think he's going to be a late developer, if anything, I think.
I feel like he's younger now than he was when we brought him in. I mean, it's just it's getting ridiculous. But
yeah.
Okay, next question. Why is it, regardless of whom we play, it seems that with every possession, the attack has to go through Hector? Getting back to Hector again. We get the ball, it goes to Mesut Ozil in the final third, who promptly dumps to Bellerin repeatedly. It's almost as if Bellerin is the number 10 now. Why he's not a good crosser, and then there's a angry red emoji face at the end of it, which is important to put in. Andy, I'll start with you on that. Let's tackle this one. Why is Bellerin apparently the number 10?
Well, I think it's because there's a lot of emphasis going down our right-hand side. I think that Bellerin's obviously a lot more forward-thinking than what Nacho is. And so obviously it moves down that flank. Typically we see Ozil there as well, cutting inside, so you get that partnership going between those two. I don't necessarily agree with him being the guy that's playing in a number 10 role. I think we often see him very high up the pitch, which can leave us exposed, because I think that he knows he's got the pace that he might be able to recover a lot more reliably than other fullbacks might be able to. But I
think he or she was referring to the fact that that he's the one that's finding the final pass instead of Ozil, not that he's actually playing in the center. Distributing as a number 10.
There's a lot of nervousness about our attack quite often, and that there is no one besides Ozil and Bellerin, and now thankfully Mkhitaryan, that wants to play that final killer ball. There's always this constant passing around the edge of the box until we find the perfect chance. But that perfect chance against great teams that can defend well, which you find in a plethora in the Premier League, you're not always going to get that chance coming in so often. So I think we need to be a little bit more brave, and Bellerin is certainly the one that is a lot braver than the others are trying to get a pass that goes into the box.
Okay, good answer. And the next question was kind of spoiled by something you said earlier in the podcast. But Tom, what is your favorite animal and why? I guess you could add the why part.
Obviously I've drop kicked one supposedly in my dreams, but sea otters are currently, because ironically, it used to be a dolphin when I was a kid, but I always thought that came across quite feminine. I know it sounds quite sexist now, but it's now a sea otter.
You could just make it a male dolphin, and then it's not so feminine.
Yes, it's a sea otter, mainly because I love any program about animals in the sea, obviously being fish rather than animals, but I prefer going to aquariums and zoos, and I love dogs, so they are like the dogs of the water in a way. So that's very much why a sea otter is my favourite animal.
Okay, well that's an interesting peek into the mind of.
I have to say that on an Arsenal podcast.
Well, we only spend about 20% of the podcast actually talking about Arsenal, and you know that about us, so. So now we know something that you didn't previously know about Tom. Next question is, can Tom talk about Danny Welbeck's performance? I know you saw this one on Twitter. Surely he must be suffering from a damaged ACL. Would love to know what it's like to play with a damaged and ruptured ACL from someone who's been there themselves. Tom, you're the only one that can answer that question right now.
I know. Well, I don't think he's played.
You can answer it 15 times.
I don't think he's played necessarily with a damaged ACL in the same condition as I have, and that's not me boasting. Obviously, he wouldn't be allowed to play on it unless it was at full fitness. But basically, what happened with mine is that I obviously full ruptured, so that's like completely snapping the ligament.
You're saying you're tougher than Danny Welbeck, is what
miles tougher. And so I decided then to play while I was at work. On Fridays, the teachers go down to the sports hall and have a 5-a-side or 7-a-side or 8-a-side, depending on how many there is, futsal game. And I ended up getting involved in that and playing on my ruptured. This is before I had the surgery. On there, and eventually it did go again, and I was warned that if I continued, I'd likely never be able to play any sort of sport again until I had the surgery, and maybe even after that. So obviously, I did put my pride behind me and stopped playing until the surgery, and now I'm looking towards a September return to sport, hopefully. But I'm finding it hard to do the physio because my physio turned around and said, because I've got to do these squats. And he turned around to me and he was like, because obviously I'm assuming you find it quite hard to find the time during the day because you're at work and you're teaching. He said, just do the squats like when you're teaching. And I was like, are you joking?
Yeah, that would go over well.
Just doing mini squats in front of
a bunch of 13-year-old girls. Like, why is he, like, what is he trying? Is he coming on to us? What's happening here?
Yeah, weird. So, very weird suggestion.
God, I would love to be a fly on the wall for one of those classes that you're teaching. Oh, my God. Okay, next question. In fact, this is the final question. What do you think is the best and or worst, I guess you could provide one of each or just one, that Wenger or Arsenal has made so far this season?
Oh, best and worst decision. Oh, he's back.
There's some feedback. All right, so go ahead.
Yeah, so best and worst decision Arsene Wenger has ever made. Well, the best decision...
This season.
It's this season only. Okay. The best decision he has ever made was to go out and sign Aubameyang. I think.
Did he make that decision?
I mean, he has to ultimately, he still signs off on all the deals. So whilst it might have been him who put forward the idea, he still has to sign off on it at the end of it. And he's the main man who decides it. So agreeing to that, yes, I think that's probably the best decision he's made. In terms of the worst decision, was obviously signing a new contract. So I think that was fairly obvious. But if I try and move past that, to try and think of something else, I think it's been to just most loyally play Alex Iwobi continuously, even though he needs to be taken out of the fire. And I know it's not a popular thing to say, but I am a bit of a fan of Iwobi and believe he has got the ability to do well, and he gets a lot more stick than he deserves because he's still a very, very young player.
But he deserves some stick, though. I mean, he shouldn't be out there, and it's not his fault.
I don't deny that, but the thing is that these players need time out of the firing line sometimes to recuperate, get their confidence back, and come in. Bellerin hasn't had that either, and that means he's therefore been put under pressure and is now getting a lot of stick from the fans. Those two in particular have been massive victims, basically, of being overplayed when they should, for players their age, being taken. And I'm going to bring up Asensio, and I had to at some point. But he's allowed to.
I was going to let you off on that with the one mention from your intro, but let's go ahead.
He's allowed, amongst loads of other youngsters, to get time out of the firing line, to not be the full centre of attention. And so when they do play, they can give their 100% attention and 100% of their effort.
And people all over Wales are groaning right now. Okay, so now we've got there's a total of 5 questions, and I will identify the question askers in a minute. But you've got to pick which is the best question, and the criteria is whatever the hell you want it to be. So you're going to pick a winner from the questions. Do you need me to remind you of the questions?
No. Well, it's tempting for me to pick the question, which allowed me to mention Asensio for obvious reasons. But
any of these questions could have allowed you to mention Asensio, given that you just push him into any conversation anyway.
Well, maybe not the lone one, and the lone ones were the one ironically I'm going to go for, because I just wanted to mention Lucas Perez and how dismayed I am at his poor treatment is always good. So yeah, the lone question, the first question you asked. Okay,
so that will win it.
Who won?
I'm going to go in reverse order. The best and worst decision was from Tokyo Gooner. Been a while. Thank you for that. The damaged ACL was our buddy Schwinn. who asked politely first if ACL questions were okay, and I said no, they're not okay. They're encouraged. The favorite animal question was me, so I wasn't going to be able to really win anyway.
Okay.
And the Hector Bellerin as final distributor of the ball, Tom Rosenhammer, my buddy Tom from Richmond, who we will be catching the Watford game with together. You've met him before. And in fact, the Loney question was a second question from Tokyo Gooner. So here's the thing, though: if Tokyo Gooner lives in Tokyo, then he's going to have to pick a proxy to pick a pack of proxies to win the bag of dicks, because they will not ship to Japan. Only the U.S., the Canada, and America. So. And speaking of which, if you want to order a bag of dicks for yourself because you're too unoriginal to come up with a good user question or enter any of our contests, you can go to www.bagadicks.com/Gooners and use promo code Gooners to get 10% off. So Valentine's Day is gone.
My contract that says I'm not allowed to attend a podcast where the sponsor is this. There must be something somewhere.
Isn't that why you lock your? Yeah, I mean, we'll come up with I'll hire a lawyer to void that contract for you, because this is absolutely necessary. So Tokyo Gooner, I'll be in touch with you and we'll get things sorted out. So thanks for our users for questions. That's really just one of the only things left is to say, what do we think of the second leg? Is it going to be just a steamrolling? Is it going to be a kind of almost the equivalent of a dead rubber, boring 90 minutes of kind of squeezing the tie out without anything bad happening and just trying not to get hurt? But Andy, what do you think?
I think that we go in there with probably a younger lineup, but I think defensively and midfield we're probably going to be stronger. I think maybe Ozil doesn't play. I hope not. But maybe we see Aaron. I think the lineup pretty much stays as close to it is, with a few players that aren't included. But we can't give them the opportunity to get one or two goals and have too weak of a bench to not counter. So I see us with a strong-ish lineup.
That's the thing. You can't go in with a bench like we had against Forest.
Right.
Because then you've got no backup plan at all, and it can blow up in your face. I mean, Ostersunds isn't going to score 3 away goals at Emirates, no matter who we put out there. I don't think. But
unless they get 3 penalties and Czech's playing.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I think we can also bank on Czech not playing in that second game. But I hope they don't play Ramsey, because if he's coming off an injury and he's able to play in the final at Wembley, I mean, that is his home. And he needs to be fresh for that game. But, Tom, what do you think?
I was playing FIFA, man. I didn't hear the question.
There's one more.
No, seriously, what was the question? I was genuinely looking at a message I got.
Did you pack some informed player that? By the way, no, Tom, I
was looking at Tokyo Gooner's Twitter account, ironically, because he often talks to me about. He gives me Takuma Asano updates. And that was one of the players that could have come back from loan that I was going to mention, except I don't think he has a work permit, so I don't even think it's possible. No, that's annoying. So what was the question?
The question was your prediction for the second leg.
Oh yeah, I did hear it. Sorry, my bad.
The second leg being the one with the gimpy knee.
With the good knee. I think we'll absolutely smash him, to be honest. I think that we'll play a first-string side in preparation for the cup final. And I think you'll see us win at least 5-0. So I think they're in for a rough 90 minutes, but they'll enjoy every second of it, because they should, because they deserve to be recognised for their achievements so far.
Does Ozil play Thursday and Sunday?
Yes, he does. Yes, I think considering we wouldn't have played a proper competitive match from the Spurs match. I think it's important you play the first team to get them warmed up and competitive and ready for the cup final. Yeah.
All right. Well, that seems to be what Arsene Wenger is going to do. So we shall see. I think that we're going to win quite comfortably, probably 3 or 4-0 in this game, maybe 3 or 4-1. But I'm happy that we didn't get tripped up, or that it doesn't appear that we're going to get tripped up in this stage, because that gives me 2 more Arsenal games, 1, maybe 2 more to attend while I'm over there in March. So I'm hoping to pick some reachable place, not FC Astana in Kazakhstan that where I may never return alive. That's it, gentlemen. Thank you for taking your time in the middle of your morning, afternoon, whatever time it is, and it's going to be a little weird with no games this weekend, but maybe a little bit of relaxing, and I might actually pay attention to my family this weekend, which is always a good thing. Just considering I'm leaving them for 3 weeks in about 2 weeks, so looking forward to that. Have a wonderful week, guys. And anything else you want to add, Andy?
No, thanks a lot, Tom. Appreciate you coming on.
No problem.
Cheers. See you soon. Come on, you Gooners.